welcome. We're a fairly small crowd, but this is going to work out all right. I'm Jim Milliken. I'm the chair of the Concord Historical Society. And what we're doing tonight is I had given a call over to the New Hampshire Humanities Group. And because I had seen in their program, which some of you have, they're announcing the Big Watch, which is, it says U.S. at 250 years. And obviously that ties in with the Declaration of Independence and especially Ken Williams' program. So tonight, what we intend to do is we're going to show part of an introduction to the American Revolution program that they put together. And you know what? I think to be safe, I'm going to read about 1 minute of things that are right in the program the program called Engage. And then afterwards, we have a guest with us, Mohammed Defay. And Mohammed works with the Humanities Council, and he will help facilitate some discussion when we get done. And I may have us pull some chairs around so we're more in a circle than maybe like this, but it'll work out. But even before I do that, I'm going to take the opportunity to tell you a little bit more about what's going on in Concord. And I was looking for my whole list, and I couldn't find it, but I have the whole list sitting right here. And so I'm very fortunate to have Jennifer here, who's going to help me review the list. Concord has a 250-300 anniversary committee, and she co-chairs that with the former Mayor Boulay. And there are a lot of things that are happening in Concord between now and July 4th. Maybe I'll go backwards. On July 4th, there is going to be a huge parade in downtown Concord. And that's being sponsored by the city of Concord. And then that evening, there's going to be fireworks again, like there always is on July 4th. But it's going to be bigger and better than probably you've ever seen. We encourage you to get up to Memorial Field fairly early because it's going to be quite an event. But not to leave out the state. The parade will go around downtown, end up at the State House, and at the State House, excuse me, there's going to be speakers and other activities there that are sponsored by the state of New Hampshire. That's on July 4th. But now let's back up a little bit and tell you there's a whole bunch more going on. Maybe I'll hit the one most important here with Ken Burns. On June 9th, Ken Burns is being sponsored with the New Hampshire Humanities Group also at the Capital Center for the Arts. And I think it's a ticketed event, and the tickets just went on sale. And I went on and got myself a ticket really quickly. But when I went to do that, seats are going like crazy. And if you want to be there, you need to get online and buy those tickets from the Capital Center of the Arts. I think the event starts at 7. There may be some other things happening before that, like I think downstairs in the governor's area, there's going to be some booths and other things like that, as I understand it at the moment. But that's on June 9th. Then catch me when I make too many mistakes here.
I have it right up behind you, so.
Oh, you have it right in front of us. Oh.
This is our website.
Yeah. Our website, and you guys take a look at that. Concord, New Hampshire Historical Society website.
This is the Concord NH One Shared Prosperity.com that we're using for the Concord 250-300 events. That when the city of Concord has events that we want to do in shared community, that we'll be able to use this site going forward. But for this year, it's for the 250-300. On June 20th, the Concord Historical Society is doing an event here on North Main Street. We're closing down the road for an old-fashioned block party. It is called specifically Liberty and Legacy. There's this great historic story about when the Constitution was being ratified by the state of New Hampshire. Our delegates were arguing over the Bill of Rights on June 20th in 1787. And they broke for the night. They went down to the Red House at the corner, and they were working out their differences eyeball to eyeball. And so we are going to do a friendly toast to recognize the event. There's going to be cornhole, which is not cornhole from back in the 1800s. They had a different name. We call it cornhole today. There will be face painting and food trucks, and R.P. Hale is going to do a concert for us here in the Kimball Jenkins estate, plus the gallery will be open. There'll be historic displays of items that we have from the Concord Historical Society. But this is a partnership event with Concord Historical Society, the Pierce Vance, Kimball Jenkins Estate, and Concord Lutheran Church, the Concordia Lutheran Church. Market days, June 25th and through the 27th. The theme this year, it's really just our regular market days, though we're asking vendors to theme themselves around the 250, 300. There is the historic reading that we partner with the Black Heritage Trail. That is on Saturday, June 27th at noon. We are the community representing, obviously, the state capitol, but there are more than 20 communities across the state that are doing Frederick Douglass's famous reading, What to the Slave Is Your 4th of July. It is a very moving, touching speech that every American that has ever immigrated here is a new American who's born here, is part of our Native American cultures. If you feel a vulnerable community in any way, shape, or form, this speech is for you. July 4th, the day-long events. The State House is also going to have the reenactors for the Lafayette reenactors, and I think they're blowing off a cannon, something to see. And then the fireworks in the evening. Concord Historical Society is going to be theming most of our second Thursday of the month events around Concord history. And next month, I think we have the Concord Monitor that is going to be joining us. There you go.
So, to name a few, there's a lot going on. The Concord Monitor is going to be running those things pretty regularly, and also go on our webpage. Having said that, this whole year of dealing with the American Revolution and the many hours that Ken Burns and his other persons, and I'll read that in 1 second, have put together one fantastic program, and it's something that is I think, especially important this year, and can't emphasize that enough. So I'm going to use my little light here and say, this is called the Big Watch that the Humanities Council put together. It's called the Film Screenings and Discussion and Many Events Around the State. And in the booklets we've given you there's more than 30 of them that are going on. But it's called Join Us to Mark the 250th Anniversary of the Declaration of Independence, with more than 80 community-driven programs across the state, and each location below in your booklet. We'll watch a short excerpt from the American Revolution film by Ken Burns, Sarah Botstein, and David Schmidt, focusing on excerpts called The Spirit of Service. Each event includes facilitating discussion on remembering together the moments that shaped who we are, where we're headed, and the stories that define our future. So there's a little more, but I think you got it. So what we're going to do is first we'll show the excerpt, and I highly recommend, I think you have to become a member of Humanities to watch the whole program. But it's available online.
Yes, through New Hampshire Humanities, you can sign up for basically a sponsorship or a Here's sponsoring to watch, and also through New Hampshire PBS.
So
And you
they
can
haven't,
watch the whole series on New Hampshire.
Becky, a little louder for me.
You can watch the whole series on New Hampshire PBS.
Look, you can watch the whole series on New Hampshire PBS. And I haven't watched the whole thing. I've watched pieces, and every time I watch it, I say, oh my gosh, you know, now I need to see what was just before what I just saw, and you've got to watch it, and it's so poignant. It is absolutely essential, in my opinion, that every single American watch that this year, because it'll set the stage for our short future and our long future. And that's about as political as I'll get, but I just use the word politics intentionally. So let's get started.
You know, I'm originally from Morocco, and when I heard that I would be part of this, I was very excited because Morocco was the first country in the world to sign the American Constitution. Yeah, that's the first signature in the American Constitution with the signature of King of Morocco. So for me, it's a, however, you know, I lived in Morocco, so for me, this is more learning of an experience than, because I lived in a monarchy for years, a monarchy that is, I would say, 9 centuries old. So when you watch like something like this, that is appealing to who you are or what is your background, there are different things that could transpire. A feeling, an idea, an emotion. What comes to you? The first thing that comes to you when you watch this?
For me, it was like, wow. You go through schooling as a child, American history, and I forget what grade, but you learn of this stuff, dates, history, people. And as kids will be kids, you were like, why do I need to know this? And now, I think in our latter years, 50s, 60s, even some a little older, I think it has way more meaning now. You understand so much more depth on all the layers and the details of you know, these weren't soldiers, these were farmers and paupers and thieves and whomever else fighting for this country, which, again, as a youngster in grade school when you took American history, you're like, eh. So I think it resonates far more now that's had a chance to percolate for many years. Having revisited, I think is great. There was a lot of, those excerpts were great.
So it takes a few decades to go from to wow.
It does.
What comes to you first? What is the thing that?
Well, one of the things I really noticed is that apparently everybody considered themselves a full-blooded citizen, and that they were able to have equal rights and help make decisions together. And that's really remarkable. And even those who were quite wealthy who, to some degree, opposed that, came along and were a part of doing the revolution and having us be successful in creating a republic and a democracy. And one of the other thoughts that keeps running through me is, I'm not sure if right today, enough of our citizenship understands the past. Even I have learned a great deal from, and, you know, I had civics and history and so forth in school. And I think it's kind of downplayed today, and I think the success of our country is going to require everybody to participate.
Well, once again, one of the things that bothers me about all this stuff is the number of questions that don't get answered. Like very early on, you know, they were saying, you know, brother was fighting against brother and so forth. And way back when I was in elementary school, we were told that only a third of the people really wanted to become independent, and a third wanted to stay with Great Britain, and a third didn't really care. I mean, my experience with people is probably 2/3 didn't really care. Anyway, so it was a small minority that worked everybody up into this, but no one has ever really talked about, you know, the similar numbers of people who wanted no part of this. I mean, somebody told me that 24 people were forced to leave New Hampshire. You know, they were told, you know, get out of town, go somewhere else. But, you know, that's not anything like a third or any substantial number. So, you know, once again, we seem to be missing, you know, what's the story of the people that didn't like it? I mean, we had one battle of the Revolutionary War that had only one British soldier in it. And everybody else was either the, you know, the rebels or the non-rebels, the people, the Americans that wanted to stay part of the Queen of the, you know, England. And the same thing, I've always wondered and never really got an answer. You know, just north of us, there's two more states who are called Upper and Lower Canada then. Now they call them Quebec and Ontario. And up until 7 years earlier, they'd been part of France. And I'm just surprised that, you know, they weren't really recruited to join. We sent an army up there, but they didn't really try and enlist the local people to their cause. They more just, you know, went up from Maine, got beat, came home, and that was the end of it. I mean, we could have had a quite different country if they inspired the French who occupied, you know, most of the people in those two areas to also, you know, why not 15 colonies? So, you know, I haven't seen the whole thing, I only saw the excerpts, but it seems to be missing those key things about, you know, what about the people we talked about earlier that didn't want a part of this? And what about the people in Canada who weren't really invited?
Well, you know, I think we are lucky to live today, to live in this period here, because there are two things that make this kind of work really interesting. The first thing is the science of history changed a lot. You know, history used to be just a narrative from one perspective. Today, there are so many other sciences involved in history: anthropology, sociology, economics, and they say that there are different ways to look at history. You can look at it from within, you can look at it from the same level, or you can look at it from above. And that's why we always miss a perspective when we look at history. It's so hard to portray all the experience. You're gonna always have one perspective. And that's why this kind of work is good, because that's one perspective. We could go and see another perspective, and another perspective. And the difference between all those perspectives is the measure of our intelligence. That's the difference between a person who learns and a person who doesn't. A person who doesn't just watch one thing, and a person who does learn, has an intelligent learning, is a person who looks at things from a different perspectives. I feel so lucky, because for me, this is 100% learning. My ancestor did not fight for freedom. they were not here. I came here 2001. So I look at the things, I look at this from a whole different perspective than you. And I'm learning from you and your reactions. So one of my questions for you is, what is the thing that you never knew about when you watched that? Something that hit you for the first time.
I would say Abigail Adams was quite the woman.
She's a wise woman.
Yeah,
It would be interesting, I mean, whether they talk about it, sort of whether she found her voice because of John Adams, or if she was like that.
yeah.
Because of John Adams.
Yeah, so, I mean, some of her quotes and stuff, and what the women did, the children did. You sort of forget about that, and you always focus on the fighting and the military and the guns and the cannons and the horses and the pictures.
Mhm.
But you pull back the curtain to what's back
behind?
there.
Yeah, what's in the background?
There are very good biographies of Abigail Adams, if she doesn't make you read them or whatever. That, essentially, he was away so much of the time that she was running, their whole business and family.
Because you could,
Well, I mean, it would have been very bad if she couldn't, because
yeah.
the whole thing would have collapsed.
Yeah,
And having somebody who can manage your home successfully, so you can go down to Philadelphia and you act with your buddies.
and this is a genuine question. It's not a fascinating issue. Do you feel like from that time with that woman, there was a regression? The role of women have been clouded like a little bit? Because I know that in the US, women started to vote not a long time ago.
I think there's an effort to suppress women even today. That it's cyclical, that it's happened in ancient times when women were revered, then women's power was taken away. And this is the same. You have, you can look at World War II, that when the men went off to war and the women had to come together to build the ships and everything else, they came back and their jobs were taken away. This is what we see all the time. And, like to Bill's point about Abigail Adams, I'm not as well read as others, and I would never have known, but then it also is just very reminiscent of how women were revered when it was time that the pressure was put on them to act and to stand up and to support a community, and then it was taken away. We tell stories in Concord history about the settlers here first in Concord, and that it really was a collaboration of the men and the women and the children, all had to work together to survive these very severe winters. You could not do it by one gender, one color, one age, nothing. We had to work together. And I think that is a message that we learned through trial and error, but that sometimes we forget the value of one's work.
Yeah, I mean, the first thing you know about the French Revolution is that the person who was carrying the banner in that beautiful painting was a woman. So, and that's why they said the successful revolutions are revolutions what everyone buys in. It's hard. We in the Arab world, like 15 years ago, we had what we call the Arab Spring. It collapses because it was not a social project. What I see here is a socio-political project. People decided we want freedom, we want liberty, and that's why everyone was in. And that's why the dynamic started to grow and grow and grow. But also we have to, we can't forget that there is also a fight for interest. There is a wealthy politic or wealthy class that invested in that revolution. And there is another wealthy class that invested against that revolution. And those are the dynamics. It's like the tectonic plates, like they push each other, and one of them is gonna go up. That's what they say in the history of revolutions. So my question was, what is the first thing that captivated you? But my second question is, what is the thing that you would reject even today when you see this?
Well,
It's a very
my first
political
impression
question.
was,
It is a very political question.
this is a miracle that we have the United States today. I mean, people were able to actually come together enough. It seemed like, what was the denominator in all of this? And I guess it's freedom. Um, and independence. But even over the years, women didn't get their independence. And not full freedom, as we speak of the black folks in our communities. They're still fighting for their right to be totally free. And this experiment is quite amazing, really quite amazing. And we're going to lose it if we aren't careful.
But in some ways, we are fighting even today, just to retain the partial rights that we have, which is even harder, because when you are part of a protected class, essentially that the US government says that you are a protected class because you've been treated less equal than others, and yet you have elected officials high in office that are trying to take even those protected rights away from you.
I can see some commonality in our history today. And somehow we've managed, through that denominator, to survive, but I think it's tough today.
What changed? What changed? Is there a change? Do you think
Human nature
that
hasn't changed.
nothing changed?
No, it's human nature has not changed, it's the same. We're operating on the same mindset today that we had back during the revolution. Nothing's new under the sun.
And the drive for money is much different nowadays than it has been previous.
Oh, I don't know, a lot of those men got out of fighting because they had the money to buy off the
Yeah.
That's what I
soldiers.
mean, money is king.
Oh, yeah.
Maybe the perception to money, not the money itself.
When you mentioned women's equality, I just finished reading The Alchemist again, and I'm thinking to myself,
I love that book.
the thing that is so interesting is that women's body is in sync with the moon. The
Talk to any
phases of the moon.
OBGYN and they will tell you exactly the same thing.
The what?
Any OBGYN will tell you exactly the same thing. We are not pregnant for 9 months, we are pregnant for 9 lunar months.
Yeah, but also every 28 days.
That's right.
So I think women have more power than they think.
I agree. Yeah, you see, I think that it's a history, and I hate this, history repeats itself. No, history renews itself, because what we're learning today is adding something to our way of looking at things. You see, I'm thinking about that, and I'm gathering what we have said, and I'm thinking it's not the fight for money, it's the fight for freedom, for liberty, but also it's the way we fought between us. You know, my father used to say, you have 6 brothers and sisters, and you're gonna have differences, but it's the way that you will manage those differences that's gonna keep this family together.
But is it for freedom or for power?
Yes, well, power is gonna be here all the time. Human beings are thirsty for power. Verbal power, emotional power, domination, we're like that. How do we channel this? How did we organize ourselves as a society to channel this? That's the difference. That is the difference. You know, if you look at some Scandinavian countries, they limited the power of the individual within the society. This way, this individual, woman or man, cannot step over the rights of the others. I just read that one of the ministers had to resign because she used the car that belongs to the government for her own grocery. So, so that's the difference. And that's why I asked you, what is the thing that you can reject when you see that? When you compare, we always compare to today. That's natural. We always compare to, when you see this, you go like, oh, today is. What is the thing that you could say, that hit you and say, oh, this is not what I see today? Yes, go ahead.
Well, this isn't quite the answer to that question. You said something that was very interesting to me. You said, this is our past, but because you're from Morocco and came here more recently, it isn't yours. Well, I'm going to suggest that most of us, if we did a genealogy, we would find that our relatives came over from somewhere else long after the revolution. Most of our, ancestors were not involved in it. Now, there were big immigration after the revolution, far more than in the beginning.
Yeah.
And that would include, blacks as well as whites. I mean, they didn't, really get into the plantation until much later. So, most of us, we're thinking of it as our past, but it isn't really.
Yeah.
How far back do we go? He's our ancestor guy in the house. I know I have relatives back to the early 1800s. I don't know about you.
I'm back into like 1200 and beyond.
Here?
On a couple lines, no.
No,
Oh, okay.
Europe.
Okay.
Over Europe.
Yeah, okay.
You had William Carpenter, right? Was
Yes.
one of your earliest in Rhode Island?
But I mean, was that before the revolution?
Yes.
I believe so.
Okay, well, I think you're probably unique. I think most of my ancestors probably came over in the 1800s.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, this guy was like a sheriff or something, right?
Yeah, Rehoboth.
In Rehoboth, Massachusetts.
I tend to think that the reason we've been able to keep together is, first of all, the sense that we have freedom to do whatever within our government guidelines. And I think the equality piece is still out there, not always equal. But I think whoever came up with the right to vote guaranteed our right to be equal. In other words, our votes can make a huge difference. And that's one right we need to be very, very careful not to give up, because that's what's going to allow us to survive. Even between the very poorest and the very richest, we all have one vote.
Mm-hmm.
That's huge.
It is. It is, and that's me looking at this country from outside. We taking our votes here for granted. Whether you vote for this one or this one, you still can vote. You still have a right to vote, and that's something that other people don't have outside. So, relativity is a very, I would say, important concept to keep in mind when you think that what's going on here is bad. So, I think there is, and this is a question that I wanted to ask. Do you think that when a person is part of a project or part of a revolution, sees the things, lives the things, feel the things differently from a person who comes years after? I mean, those people fought for it. We did. We harvested what we did they planted. Do you think that is the difference?
I think anyone that has firsthand experience of anything is gonna have a different perspective than someone who is reading about it secondhand or hearing about it thirdhand or watching a movie 60 years later on it than those that were there.
So that
It just has to be.
So that means that the perspective changes the attitude and the behavior and the gratitude and.
Well, that's why education is so important. I think it was Thomas Jefferson that said,
Yeah.
our democracy is only going to survive if we have an educated public. And you need to be very careful to make sure we don't lose that opportunity to be educated to some degree. That equalizes our knowledge. And as a result of that equal knowledge, then your vote also becomes significant. But I've been greatly educated by this series of films that they've put together. It was, gut-wrenching what these people went through. But now that I look back on it and I see how hard it was for them to create a foundation for me today, 300 years later, 250 years later. I want to honor that. And I'm going to honor that by voting, considering everyone equal, and trying to make a better world for the people around me. Because that's what I think they had in mind. I think that's a fantastic idea. Let's not lose it.
Well, this comes back to my original question about, who was for it and who was against it. They had a program at the New Hampshire Historical Society a couple of weeks ago about, are you a rebel or a redcoat? What would you have done? Unfortunately, it was designed for kids. That didn't stop me from going anyway. And essentially, the facilitator, would read a scenario, and then, you had to vote one of three options. The sheriff goes to where to, seize the people that were sawing up the king's trees illegally. So, do you offer to show the sheriff where the guy is he's looking for? Or do you say, no, I'm not gonna help you, you're the bad guy, or you just sit there and drink your rum? And I found I was nearly always right in the middle. I wasn't really in favor of, these rebels who are causing trouble for the king, but on the other hand, I wasn't really in favor of the king causing trouble for the population. I just kind of let this happen. And so I think, they say history is written by the winners. I think to a certain extent that's true. It's the people that built the country the way it is that have, given us our feeling for this is how it should be.
I think I see some of this even playing out when we look at all the No Kings protests that are happening at the State House and other places in the state and across the country. Not everybody's participating, to your point. It's also, not everybody votes. There are some people that are just passive participants in this society. We can look at it on the small scale of every community, and we can look at it on a statewide level, and we can look at it across the country. There are those that are in to make something, and there are those that are just here to do their job, and they go watch Dancing with the Stars when they get home. And there are others that are gonna show up and they're gonna go, this is wrong, and we need to do better. I think that for Concord Historical Society, we're looking at perspective of this community as it's changed over time, but we can see it just in the time that we've been here. Jim is, not to pick on Jim, but he's in his 80s. He grew up here, he was born here. His perspective is not the same as ours. We moved here 40 years ago, but 40 years ago is not the same as the person that moved here 20 years ago,
Yeah.
which is now you.
Yeah.
Do you see what I mean?
Absolutely.
So that perspective of when did you get here?
Yeah.
Also, when did you arrive? Matters as well. And Royce, you were born here, yes?
I've only been here 50 years. I mean,
Only
in New
50
New Hampshire,
years.
that doesn't count as a lifelong.
And Shirley, you've been here
72,
72?
88.
You
Wow.
win. You win.
Oh, you win.
But that's awesome.
Yeah.
Becky's been here 35?
Wow.
No, and one thing that happened during the revolution is one of our, I don't know how to phrase this, you know, smartest and most energetic citizens was run out of town. Rumford?
Yes,
Oh, yeah.
yes.
So we lost one of our best people due to the revolution.
Why? Because I'm learning here.
Because he was in favor of staying with Britain,
Okay.
staying under the king's, but he was a count. There is a difference.
He wasn't
Okay.
a real count.
Yeah.
Not really.
Well, true.
He became
True.
a count.
That's a great presentation.
Yes, it was. He declared himself a count.
Okay.
Now, how long do you want to go?
We still have 10 minutes. That's
Okay.
Still have 10 minutes.
But it is interesting, I mean, Roy brings up a really good
Yeah.
point,
Oh,
when
I-
you really look at these different perspectives, and then you even boil it down to, you know, any election, not everybody's participating. Not
But-
everybody is for, not everybody is against, but
What they say that societies move as a wave. You know, societies that you go like it. There is no horizontal or vertical changes in the societies. There are waves. They call them actually the social waves, and those social waves, they bring a way of thought up, then they put it down. And this, when it's going down, it builds upon another thing, and then it goes up, and then you remember hippism, then something else, then realism, then something else, and it's in other societies, those waves cause violence. In other societies, those waves cause openness. In others, they cause poverty. In others, they cause richness. So, how do you see those waves here? And I love this dynamic 88, 50, 72. It's so nice to know that the waves
very
are
young.
I'm the baby here, 26.
That's right.
I've been here for 26 years, but I live the wave a different way.
I think sometimes when people are from Concord, we have a different language that we speak to each other. And usually the references are made in the past, what was there in the past, and you know where it is. But nobody else knows what we're talking about, but we're still thinking about.
Because the Smiths haven't lived there in 80 years, but it's still the Smiths' house.
The what?
It's like the Smiths haven't lived there in 80 years, but it's still the Smiths' house.
Oh, yeah, definitely. But that's one of the things I think that people that were born and raised here have that in common. That they live in the past.
I think there is some also because we do have a lot of people that come from a lot of different places. The influx of people that come from Massachusetts are the most in mind because we've been arguing with Massachusetts since the day we became Concord, right?
Yeah.
So I think that there is the other perspective, well, I know because I was born here, versus when does there come a time where you get to say, I've been in this community long enough to know, but also recognize I haven't been long enough as others. You know, Dave Murray is great for saying, until your family's been here for 4 generations, you got no vote.
Okay, I'll tell you one of my favorite stories about the Revolutionary War. This has to do with the very far mountainous part of South Carolina. There was a British colonel named Ferguson, and he recruited an army entirely out of Americans who were loyal to the crown. And they went around burning the properties of the Americans who were rebels. And the Americans who were rebels didn't much care for this, you might imagine. But they tried to get help, but there was one Continental Army that was modeled up in Charleston, another was chasing around in North Carolina, and there was just, nobody around. So what they did is they called on their relatives. They had relatives who had given up, what you think of as the colonies, and gone over the Appalachians to the far side, and were living on the frontier. They weren't farmers anymore, they were hunters, and they fought Indians, and, filled their larder with deer and stuff. And so they said, will you come help us? And they did. And they called them the Over the Mountain Men. A bunch of them showed up, came back over the Appalachians to this place. Ferguson and his men decided, we're gonna get on this hill. They call it King's Mountain. I've been there. Around here you kind of call it King's Knoll or King's Molehill or something. And anyway, they're up on this hill. It's very thick. And they said, we're perfectly safe up here. Nobody can attack us up here. This is, not open fields of fire like we used to have. Well, guess what? The frontiersmen show up. They don't even really know who's in charge. There's, a bunch of different groups who showed up, so they say, okay, we will surround this hill and walk up and shoot everybody we see. And that's what they did. And so, the end, Ferguson rides out on his horse to see what's going on, and immediately shot 6 times, so he's out of the battle. Eventually, everybody who wasn't shot gives up. And so what do these frontiers people do? They go down to Charleston to help the siege. They go down to North Carolina to, help out the army there.
They went home.
Of course, they go home, we came to help our friends and relatives, but, we're not involved in this fight. We need to go back and shoot some more deer.
That's a good story. Mohammed, thank you so much.
You're welcome.
Yeah.
We appreciate it.
Oh, it's a pleasure. I just want to say one last thing. The first thing that I noticed when I came to the United States is how people talk about their political opinions. They don't. They talk about them when they are with the people who have the same political opinion, and it's the politically correct you guys call it. And when you don't talk about your political ideas, it grows as a feeling, as an emotion, and it becomes so big that it turns against the person who is different. You're his with a different perspective. That's why here we don't express a lot what we think about the others front face to face. We talk about it when we're not with people who are politically different than us, but we hate them. That's different. In France, they fight in the cafe, and they have a glass of wine right after.
We used to do that. We don't
yeah.
do that anymore.
And that's why those kind of societies, politics are not only an opinion, it's an attitude that is accepted and acceptable. And that's probably one of the things that I like about this movie. It's because it gives you a different way to look about what you think. Because whatever you think about, it's not built on something that is completely perfect. There are so many things that you don't know. And that's why I came here.
We appreciate it. Mohammed, thank you.
Thank you.